How's it going, everyone? It's been a long time since my last video, and I've taken this little break from YouTube to reflect on the nature of my channel and the direction that it's going in. I've also gotten a billion emails from people who want me to do videos on their games, and the first of those was for this one. Forgive Me Father 2 is, unsurprisingly, a sequel to the original Forgive Me Father, a Lovecraftian-themed boomer shooter that came out a few years ago. I've talked a fair amount on this channel about the new wave of retro shooters, and you could probably get pretty fucked up if you did a drinking game for every time I go on this sort of spiel, but as we get further into the life cycle of this micro trend, it's interesting to me that we're now starting to see not just more entries into the genre, but sequels to notable titles in the space. As these sequels and spiritual successors begin to take shape and drop into the marketplace, we're witnessing in real time the re-evolution of the FPS genre as these new interactions take the series and the genre as a whole in different directions. Case in point is this game, which shares a lot of similarities with its predecessor, but also makes a lot of key changes to the gameplay loop, which keeps it feeling very much like a distinct entry that has its own unique experience on offer. First up, let's talk about the story. Forgive Me Father 2 takes place an unspecified amount of time after the original and eschews the character selection element in favor of a more focused narrative that continues the story of the priest from the first game. Like many other boomer shooters, Forgive Me Father was light on story, instead opting for indirect environmental cues. I used the wrong word in the script, fuck. Opting for environmental cues and scattered documents left throughout the levels to allow the player to piece things together on their own if they so desired to. The sequel, however, places a much greater emphasis on the narrative, with more cutscenes, dialogue, and in-game text documents. The setup is that in the aftermath of the Pestisville incident that served as the backdrop for the events of FMF1, the priest was the sole survivor, with the reporter's fate being unknown and the rest of the townspeople dead. Being the only survivor who was also in a raving state of mania, and with no one else to corroborate his story of otherworldly entities and blasphemous rituals, he was accused of being the man behind a town-wide massacre, which I guess is technically true, and was confined to a mental asylum, which is where the game begins.
Did I just kill a man? Forgive me, Father.
Despite the dramatically increased focus on storytelling, the actual nature of the events depicted within the game are much more vague and ambiguous. The plot of the original was fairly straightforward, with the simple setup that a town was overtaken by eldritch horrors that had to be cleared out with the gun in one hand and the good book in the other. This game's events, however, take on a much more surreal shape. The whole thing is framed as some kind of inner journey into the priest's insanity as he engages in some kind of inward battle for his sanity, traveling across different realms conjured up by his fractured psyche and populated with beings from beyond the looking glass. I think it would be a mistake to say that the whole thing takes place inside his head or is just a dream, though, as any fan of Lovecraft knows that in the world of the Cthulhu mythos, the distinction between the world of dreams and the world of the awake is not always a clear one. The kind of semi-mental hellscape that you fight your way through also heavily expands on the priest's backstory, with locations ranging from the cathedral, where he received his vocation, to the trenches of World War I, where he fought in a war and probably did cool war stuff. While this constant change of locales may make things seem fractured and disjointed, it also has the plus side of offering up a dramatically wider range of visual styles and color palettes than what was seen in the original. I don't think that what was on offer in the first game was bad, and it definitely is true to the source material, but they went for something slightly different here, and I think it works out just as well. Speaking of the graphics, that's probably a good segue into this portion of the video. One of the things that the original game was praised for so much was its visual style, a very comic books kind of aesthetic that reminds me a lot of the work of Rick Remender, or whoever the Hellboy artist was, I forget his name. Anyway, it had a cool look that helped it stick out from all the other 2D sprite-powered shoot-em-ups that we're getting these days. The second game goes even harder, with more detailed lighting, higher quality sprites, and a greater commitment to surreal visuals and otherworld-style landscapes. Also, remember how you could upgrade your guns to look all weird in the original? Yeah, we got that here too. Just like the first go-around, this game oozes style, literally and figuratively. A memorable arsenal of weapons is important to any self-respecting first-person shooter, and when it comes to that, FMF2 swings for the bleachers and knocks out of the fucking ballpark. Half the guns are alive, most of them are clearly not native to this realm of existence, and even the ones that are just regular guns look fucking cool anyway. Everything is expertly animated, and the visuals help make them satisfying to use. The entire game has this dreamlike, often nightmarish atmosphere to it as you traverse the dark corners of the earth and go beyond the mountains of madness, searching high and low for some semblance of sanity, which combines with the music to create this constant feeling of unease that crescendos into frantic combat, enhanced by a chorus of hard-ass music that gets you pumped up and ready to kick Cthulhu's ass. There's also a ton of Easter eggs scattered throughout levels that reference a variety of works from Lovecraft, as well as writers who either inspired him or were inspired by him, plus a lot of references to other media that's totally unrelated. If I had to give one complaint about anything though, it would probably be the performance. The game isn't exactly the most demanding thing ever, and it ran decent for the most part, but there were a couple of levels where I dropped mad frames. It's kind of weird to me that a game that's got this kind of art style would be this hard on the system. However, my PC is kind of old at this point, so that's definitely a your mileage may vary type of deal, and I have no idea if this is a common problem or not. It could very well just be a thing on my end. I do think it's worth pointing out though, because I know there's a lot of people like me out there who also have older PCs, or at least ones that aren't brand new, so if you're one of those people, just know that this game isn't going to give you the smoothest ride ever. It never crashed on me though, so at least there's that. Oh hey, I'm doing a video on a shooter, and so far I haven't really said a whole lot about the shooting part, have I? Should probably remedy that. So like I said at the beginning of this video, Forgive Me Father was a boomer shooter, so you probably know what to expect from it, but I want to point out that there's a kind of taxonomy of boomer shooters where they all kind of model themselves after different games from the genre's heyday. Some are based on Quake, some take cues from Wolfenstein, some pray at the altar of Duke Nukem, and Forgive Me Father was very much taking after the one and only Doom. Wait, fuck, there's actually two. The point I'm trying to make is that despite its many obvious innovations, Forgive Me Father was steeped in the same gameplay tropes that the daddy of the genre made use of. The sequel, however, does something real interesting in that it actually takes a lot of direction from Doom 3. My reasoning behind saying this is that along with the increased focus on narrative, the overall pace of the game is much slower this time around. The movement speed has been toned down, you have to reload most of your guns, and there's just in general more of an emphasis on methodical approaches to combat. It can still get pretty hectic, especially where the boss fights are concerned, but there's much more weight to the gameplay now that gives the player more of an opportunity to really take everything in. Another major addition from the first game is the Asylum, which serves as a hub area in between chapters. You can do pretty much everything you'd expect here, like getting perks for your character, buying new weapons, a few mini games that I spent all of 2 minutes on. It's a neat little hub area, but I didn't spend a huge amount of time here, if I'm going to be honest. What I did spend a lot of time doing was shooting things, which is convenient since the shooting in this game is pretty damn fun. Like I alluded to earlier, the whole thing has more weight to it and is overall much more methodical. It can still get pretty fast paced, but because of reloading and the slower movement speed, you can't be as carefree as in the first game. While the original had some pretty cool weapons, Forgive Me Father 2 pops some ecstasy and throws all this wild shit at you. You got the standard stuff, your revolver, shotgun, assault rifle, all the good shit that we know and love, but you've also got a rifle with a squid for a magazine. Then there's the weird rosary bead fish that shoots out 1 billion bullets per second. We also got the vomit gun. That's a good one. Can't forget about the vomit gun. This whole setup actually kind of reminds me of all the wacky shit you could use in the Build Engine games, but with a much bigger emphasis on grotesque imagery and body horror as opposed to slapstick comedy. It's a really good way to combine the overall theme of the game with the gameplay itself that showcases a lot of creativity on the part of the devs. I don't really have any complaints with the gameplay itself other than that a few of the levels can kind of drag on, mostly the Egypt one, but most of the levels here are really enjoyable, with the World War I levels in particular being highlights for me, since I really like the setting and I think they do some pretty cool little gameplay gimmicks. The enemy variety is really good too, and it's neat to see a lot of familiar monsters from the first game. The Liquidators are back, as are the standard zombies that still do the head replacement thing, and the fat guys that shoot bullets at you. They took away the health bar, so I can't remember any of their fucking names. As far as I can remember, none of them really stood out as particularly annoying to me, and the encounters are all reasonably challenging, so no complaints on that front either. Another highlight is the boss fights. They're all pretty fun and offer up some unique gameplay loops compared to the rest of the game, so they're something to look forward to at the end of each section, though the final boss battle with Cthulhu is a little disappointing and not nearly as cool as the one from the first game. So that's Forgive Me Father 2, a Lovecraft-themed first-person shooter. It's got squid guns, Catholic guilt, and sanity, but no racism, so it sucks, and I give it a 0 out of 10,000. Just kidding, racism is only recommended, not required for this genre. So I actually reward it with 4 stars. Zombie Hobo says check it out. Now if you'll excuse, my cat is missing, so I've got to go look for him by yelling out his name in the middle of the street. I'm sure that'll go well. Hey everybody, if you made it this far into the video, I just want to say thanks. It means a whole lot. Also, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, blah blah blah, all the YouTube outro bullshit. Also, a big thank you to the patrons over on Patreon, Spec Teams 1 Slingshots, the Gazer patron, and Lev, as well as the members here on YouTube, Saiga and Brigador24. Really appreciate y'all, really appreciate everybody who stuck around the gap between this video and the last one. And yeah, other than that, I'll see y'all in the next one. Goodbye.